up. Get ready. It's going to be a very, very intense journey. Begin.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 116 of the Frame Skip podcast. I am Andie Eller, and I'm joined by George. Mac Jones Loftus? Is Mac Jones a thing? I don't know what's going on with the Patriots, to be honest with you.
He's pretty bad this year. Not a great year to be holding on to Mac Jones stock, unfortunately.
Okay. Oh, that's disappointing. That's disappointing. I'm also joined by Seth, Mr. Dragon Ball Z himself. Slakehouse, how's it going?
It's first off, thank you. It's going well. Second, when do we stop referencing it as Dragon Ball Z? I mean, we're past this era.
That's true.
It's Dragon Ball
Mr.
Super
Dragon
now.
Ball Super himself.
I mean, to be fair, the shirt I'm wearing is Dragon Ball Z. But, everyone just says Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z. You either call it Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Super, because the era of Z is far over with,
Let me just say they missed out with Super. They really could have just named it Dragon Ball Super. And then we would have, would have been a natural successor to Z. Would have worked really well. Really well.
Just call it Dragon Ball 3.
I feel like it dates you. Like if you say Dragon Ball Z, you're of a very specific era.
Yeah.
It's like you're like when we were talking about like, oh, remember how cool was it when Batman beat up the Penguin? And you're like, oh, this guy's talking about Batman Returns very specifically.
There is a really fun manga that came out called That Time I Was Reincarnated as Yamcha. It's about a dude who dies in our world and gets reincarnated as Yamcha in Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, that sucks.
And it's a really fun manga. It's only 50 pages or something, but it's
Is it supposed to be like a riff on that one that's the same thing except it's reincarnated as a slime? I know that always pops up on my Crunchyroll.
I don't know. I know people love that anime, but I
know nothing about it.
It was too. I tried watching it. It was too satirical for me. I didn't like it.
Speaking of satirical, we're also joined by Coach the Cowboys, Kyle Newman.
What's up, George?
Hey, Coach. Missed you, man.
I got to talk Star Wars with Seth, and it felt so good.
You guys talk Andor?
Yeah, he hates it.
Seth loves it.
Oh, it's incredible. It's such a good show. Seth's dumb.
Oh, you like it? Good.
To be fair, I said I didn't watch it.
Oh, I showed up late to the pre-record. So.
Just wanted to clarify.
He said, "Who gives a bleep about someone that we don't care about?"
Yeah, I did say that. Yeah, I said
things that cannot be repeated on the show.
But out of respect of Austin, I will say bleep instead of saying the
bleep.
Real word. There you go.
All
Who
right,
gives a
we'll just
frick
leave the
about
audience
some freaking character that no one cares about?
I love Cassian Andor. I think he's a great character.
Did you think he was a great character in Rogue One?
I did, yeah.
I rest my case.
What?
All
right. You know what? I haven't been watching Andor, but I do want to watch it at some point.
It's really good. You have to watch like 3 episodes at a time because it's broken into basically like 3 parts of a movie.
So is it done, or is it still going?
2 more episodes.
Oh, I thought it finished last week. Damn, that's good.
No, we still got 2 episodes.
Okay.
Well,
this has been a longer one compared to the other shows.
There was a big event that happened last week, but I think that was episodes 10, and there's 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
That might be the longest like Star Wars Marvel show they've done yet, I think.
What's the next one? Right? Like when's the next time I can see a lightsaber?
Mandalorian soon.
Mandalorian season 3. Yeah.
Is it February, January? It's not that far off. Yeah.
I can't wait. Why don't they just call it The Mandalorian, subtitled Luke Skywalker? We all know that's what it's going to be.
Well, it'll be a good time either way. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm glad you all are here this evening. Or maybe it's the daytime. Maybe it's the morning time for you listening. I don't know. But it's the evening for us. So imagine it's the evening for you as you're listening to this.
8:30 is not the evening. 8:30 is nighttime.
Okay. Yeah. That's your morning? That's your morning, Seth? So
no.
right? What is your morning?
Normally, sort of. Well, see, I stopped staying up all night on my nights off because I felt like it was actually just killing me. So now on my days off, I stay up all day and then I'll sleep at nighttime.
How in the world do you go from that to night shift back and forth
With an
without-
immense amount of pain. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is funny because you don't like look tired, you know, and like you see a friend,
Yeah.
you're just like, Jesus, you look like life is just kicking your ass right now. You don't look like life's got you in a headlock.
Well,
sleep wise.
let me tell you something. You would be surprised.
No.
I have been up for 28 hours right now. So
Oh, nice.
I can't do that anymore.
Some real energy for this show, I see.
if you see me just keel over in the middle of the show, that's why. I'm dead, not sleeping.
All right, so let's kind of jump into our big topic this show. We're going to try something new this week, jump right into our big topic, and this is certainly a big topic. I know we had a similar episode about this time last year, and thought it would be fun to revisit this because we've been in an interesting period when it comes to the, what do you want to say, next gen or current gen systems. I don't know where we're at with that terminology. I think it should be current gen, but so many people are still saying next gen. So of course I'm talking about the PS5 and Series X, and as of this month, pretty much as of this week, it'll have been 2 years since the release of both the PS5 and Series X and S. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of revisit the past year, see where we're at, you know, talk about exclusives, talk about our thoughts on the systems overall over this past year and where we're at with both, well, technically with all three. And so I wanted to kind of start by talking about the sales numbers overall, because I think that's an important starting place. And just the overall availability. Now, the availability, I think, is going to be just a very subjective conversation, because I know we all have PS5s and Series X's. But Seth, I know you bought a PS5 recently, so you might have some interesting stuff to add to this. But 25 million sold for the old PS5 as of September of this year, and then the Series X and Series S about 8 million behind at 17 to 18 million as of September. So it's lagging behind a little bit compared to the PS5. But I think the more interesting conversation here is the availability. So yeah, I mean, Seth, I wanted to ask you, just from your standpoint, how easy was it for you to get a PS5? I know you just got it, maybe 2 months ago?
Yeah, so I decided as like a birthday treat to myself that I wanted to get a PlayStation 5. And I said it jokingly to my girlfriend, right? And I was like, you know, I'm gonna get myself a PlayStation 5 for my girl for my birthday. And she looked at me and she's like, okay. And I was like, yeah, but imagine, you know. and then I started thinking about it, and I started just being like, yeah, I'll just, you know, for fun, let me look into it, you know. And then I did, and I actually put in for the Amazon like waitlist thing they had going on. And I was like, this is kind of lame. And then someone, I forget who, it was like minutes before, I think Austin or George, one of you posted that it was available from PlayStation Direct. It was like right before that. I bought it from PlayStation Direct, and yeah, it was a really easy process. It showed up, and then a few weeks later, they started showing up in my Walmart. Like right now, well, I don't know about right now, but as of like yesterday, when I walked to my Walmart, there was 4 of them in our display cabinet. So I know PlayStation ramped up production of PlayStation 5s this year quite a bit in the second half of the year. So maybe that's just they're finally hitting the market. Also, I know the resale values of PlayStation 5s plummeted this year. So there's not as many scalpers grabbing them and throwing them on like eBay or whatever. So yeah. For me, it was super easy to get PlayStation 5. It took me the most minimal amount of work you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. I was just curious kind of what it was like for you. Because I mean, for me, when I got mine, I think I got mine in January of last year. So it would have been 3 or 4 months after release. And it was pretty tough. I think I had to be on the Best Buy website. I had like alerts set on my Twitter app on my phone for multiple Twitter accounts. And it was just waiting and hoping I got the alert at the right moment and got on the second that tweet went out, and that's how I got mine. But no, I'll be honest, I haven't seen any in stores around here yet, but I haven't been looking necessarily. I have seen a few Series X's, and I've certainly seen a lot of Series S's. Those things seem to be like widely available. But I'll be curious to know how that changes after God of War. I wonder how many PS5s that game is going to sell.
I wanted to pitch an idea to you guys that I've had floating around in my brain forever about this availability issue with this current generation, because it seems like it's lasted too long, and also that it coincidentally lined up with the feeling that a lot of people are having that these consoles didn't need to come out, right? And what I'm wondering is if, because, obviously Sony and Microsoft probably have the best advisors in the world as far as sales trends and whatnot. And I'm wondering if one of the reasons for these issues is because obviously the pandemic hit, and these people predicted the upcoming, economic issues that we were going to have. So maybe they rushed them out the door to get it ahead of that, ahead of those problems. Because everyone knows, when you hit a recession, people don't spend as much. So I'm wondering if maybe that's the reason. Because honestly, it feels like the PlayStation 5 and Series X could have come out a year or even 2 years later. Is kind of the way I feel about it.
100%. Yeah. Like I don't feel like I'm playing a PlayStation 5. I feel like I'm playing like a souped up PlayStation 4. Yes. And the Series X, especially because like the UI is like the same. It's identical to Xbox One. Like it really just feels like a super Xbox One.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the conversation around availability. It'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Like I said a second ago, I'm curious to see what God of War does to the availability for PS5s. I think with Series X and Series S, as we'll get to momentarily, there's really not a big holiday game. So I'm wondering, how many PS5s they sell over this next month and into the holidays, and whether we're back in a shortage situation or not. So, Coach, you've got something.
Do you think with the price hike that it'll eventually get to the States?
It did already, didn't it?
Not yet, but I think it will.
I mean, it kind of has to, right? Like, I think you might see another video game price hike too, just because of inflation.
No, I'm talking about the system itself.
No, I know, but I'm saying,
okay,
because games went up $10. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to see games go up to $80 a pop.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can't recall the exact price increase, but I think most of the PS5 increases around the world, it was equivalent to like $30 or $40 here. So I would not be surprised to see it go up to like $550 next year. Especially with PSVR 2, they just announced it's $550.
It's not backwards compatible, is that right?
No, because it runs on a completely different type of technology than the original PSVR. Because the original PSVR used the Move controllers, and then the PSVR 2 uses more of a mapping style controller, where it sees your
similar
fingers.
To like the Quest.
Yeah. So they're not really compatible. The developer would actually have to patch it over into the new system.
Yeah, and it does seem like a lot of them are patching over, which is good. But yeah. So
I guess the biggest one for me would be to make sure that Battlefront would be playable.
Oh yeah, that demo. Like the X-Wing. That's so good. It's so freaking
Did you play
good.
Squadrons?
Yes, a little bit.
Squadrons is good.
Yeah, that's okay.
The VR in Squadrons is really good.
Oh, not the VR. I haven't played the VR in Squadrons.
Oh yeah, it's really good. I use it on my Quest connected to my computer.
So, I guess from there on, I think the real big discussion here that we're going to have an interesting time with is the list of games that have released for both of these systems over the past year. I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but in my eyes, I think we've had a very, very lackluster 12 months, personally. We've had a few games here and there. I mean, certainly for PS5, I think the big ones you can reference are Horizon Forbidden West in February, Gran Turismo 7 in March, Ghostwire Tokyo in March, and then Stray July, Last of Us Part 1 in September, God of War Ragnarok in November. Xbox, on the other hand, has had a very rough 12 months. You could maybe say Forza Horizon 5, but that was like right about this time last year, so that was right at the tail end of year one. Halo Infinite was last December. You had a few like smaller games here and there. Crossfire X, that weird like campaign game that was made by Remedy for that Crossfire series, did not review well at all.
That
Released
existed.
in February. Yeah. And then As Dusk Falls was July. Scorn, October. So Xbox, aside from Halo last December, has really had not much of anything this past 12 months. Where do you guys stand on the exclusives list from year two? Because I think it's been, I think part of it is a product of COVID. I think we're certainly seeing the ramifications of like the delayed development. I would hope that coming up next year we get some big games from both systems, but I don't know. Overall, this past year has been an interesting one, certainly when it comes to the list of exclusives on both systems.
Well, the big thing that I see when I look at this list, just coming from PlayStation, is man, I really miss original games. You know, like the big ones on this list for PlayStation, the biggest ones, right, would be like Forbidden West, Last of Us Part 1, and God of War Ragnarok. All sequels or remakes. I didn't think Forbidden West was very good. I beat it a couple weeks ago, and my thoughts on it were very mild, especially with the ending. I have zero desire to play The Last of Us again, and no, Coach, I did not play it. And God of War Ragnarok, to me, which I know we're going to talk about here a little later in the podcast, has been kind of hot and cold. But as far as Xbox goes, I mean,
yeah,
this has been the story with Xbox for the last 5 or so years, though, right? Like I feel like they don't put out a whole lot of exclusive games, and it kind of like the situation with Xbox is a little different, right? Because 10 years ago we were talking about the console wars, and there's still that conversation going on with the fanboy communities, but it seems to me that Xbox is transitioning into more of a software just distribution type.
yeah.
Because they're gobbling up developers and they're putting things on Game Pass, and that seems to be where all their focus is on right now. I don't know that the exclusives are as big of a deal to Xbox as they are to Sony, because that's Sony's huge selling point is their exclusives. And when you buy a PlayStation 5, it feels like a more premium experience because you get these bigger premium games that you know are going to be worth playing, you know. But I will say, like I said from the beginning, I miss original games. I miss the PS3 era Sony with their back against the wall where they were trying different things out. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right with Xbox. I think their strategy is definitely more on Game Pass. You know, that seems to be what they're going for, is not necessarily, hey, we've got exclusive games. It's more so, hey, we've got this game that just released that is $70, but you can pay $10 and play it on our system. I think that's kind of been their strategy. My only confusion with that is, I mean, we've seen them for the past, I'd say 5 years, gobble up studios like crazy, and we really haven't seen much output from that. Every year we keep talking about, you know, they're going to have a ton of great games this year, and it seems like it never happens. And so I'm curious if that will ever come to fruition. It's been interesting. And I would say Sony is almost in the same boat. I mean, they've got a lot of great talented studios as well. And I mean, you can look at this list and still so few games released this year. Again, I think it could be COVID related. I think it could be challenges from the pandemic, but I don't know. Coach.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Seth was saying is, the experience, the PlayStation experience, I think that all started in during the PS2 era and PS3, where you had these amazing titles, like you had like Jak and Daxter, right? You had Ratchet and Clank, and then you had Infamous, Resistance. You had all of these games that were solely for the PlayStation ecosystem, and they still have those companies. I don't think too many companies have left, like they still have those companies. So, and then Sony just has Halo and Gears of War pretty much, right? And Forza, of course, but so you can only play Halo so many times, right? And at least these companies that Sony has, they're changing it up. They went from look at Naughty Dog. They went from Crash to Jak. Then they went to what was their PS3 game? Uncharted, and then now Last of Us, right? So they're evolving, right? So they're this huge company within Sony, and then you have Sucker Punch, you have Insomniac, and then what's the studios that has God of War? Is it
Santa Monica?
Santa Monica, right? So they're set. Like when you buy a PS5 or PS4, you knew what you were getting. You were getting exclusives,
right?
So George has something to say.
I've been quiet. Sorry, I didn't do the research I thought I had done earlier. And so I went through, I counted up all of like the first party developed games just for retail. This obviously doesn't include like PSN. And this is just for Sony here. But in the first like 3 years of the PlayStation 3 being out, there were 17 first party retail games and there were no remakes. There was a couple sequels, but they were sequels to games that generally existed on that system. So like we got Resistance and we got Resistance 2. We got Ratchet and Clank, which, continuation of a PS2 series. And we got Gran Turismo 5 Prologue and Everybody's Golf 5. So like those were existing, but like really they weren't remakes is my point. PlayStation 4, 3 years in, we had 16 games and 5 of them were remakes. That includes stuff like Last of Us Remastered, God of War 3 Remastered, Uncharted Nathan Drake Collection, Gravity Rush Remastered, and the Ratchet and Clank game. And then 2 years into PlayStation 5, we got 15 first-party retail games, and 6 of them are remakes. So one, it's like kind of on par for like where the other consoles were, right? Like it's 15, 16, 17. But it's just like the percentage of those games that are remakes. And I completely agree with Seth, where I do miss the PS3 back against the wall days where it was them just throwing as much crap to the wall and seeing what would stick. I think that was probably the most exciting time to be a gamer. At least in my experience. I'm sure if you're a younger listener, now is the best time to be a gamer, and you're absolutely right. But give it 10 years and you're going to feel like, man, the early PlayStation 5, late PlayStation 4, that was the best time to be a gamer. It's going to happen to you too, kids. Don't worry about it. It's just surreal to me how much they go back to the well. And it's really frustrating where like it's not the joke about like, oh, a new Nintendo console's coming out, so get ready to buy Super Mario Brothers again, because like you bought it on the NES, you bought it on the Super Nintendo with the All-Stars, you bought it again on Wii, and then you had to buy it again for Wii U, and then you can't buy it on Switch, but you can rent it basically forever. And so I'm just sitting here wondering like, hey, this is great that like these games are getting remade. And The Last of Us, I didn't play it because I played it 10 years ago when it came out.
Right.
But it's like, it's awesome that like you can remake these games in even higher, more impressive fidelity. But like at some point, it's the same thing with movies where it's just like, what are we supposed to remake 20 years from now when everything we've been doing for the last 20 years is a remake? Like, it's great that you can remake Footloose, but there hasn't been a new Footloose for you to remake 20 years from now. Like, you can't just like keep pulling stuff from the garden without planting some new stuff every now and then,
Yeah, and the thing is that they're still doing it, right? Like they just announced the Horizon Forbidden West, or Horizon Zero Dawn remake.
Yeah.
And it's like I almost snapped when I saw The Last of Us Part 1 was getting remade, right? But now we're getting Zero Dawn, which is even a newer game, and it still looks great. It plays perfect. Like there's not much of an improvement to be made with Zero Dawn. And they're just like, nah, actually, it's getting we're gonna put all our resources into this instead of doing something new and interesting. And that's what's frustrating to me, for sure.
Well, it's like I'm part of the problem because on Saturday I spent 9 hours playing Skyrim Anniversary Edition on my PlayStation 5. So like I get it. Like I am the reason crap like this keeps happening. Sure. But I don't know, like we're 2 years in. Has there been anything where you're just like, holy crap, that knocked me on my feet? And like I'm sure God of War Ragnarok, I haven't played it yet. I never finished the first one, so I'm probably not going to get to it anytime soon. But I'm sure that is finally the game. But also, it's a PlayStation 4 game.
Wait,
I mean,
how far did you get in God of War?
Probably like 3-4 hours.
Oh, okay. God of War has maybe like the 2018 one. Sorry, has maybe the most well written twist
Yes.
I've ever seen in a video game or even like a movie for that matter. Because once they lay it out to you, you're like, oh my God, it's so obvious. How did I miss it?
The seeds were planted the entire game and nobody noticed.
Yeah. And it finally reveals it at the end of the game and you're like, oh my God. You know, it's a really, really well written twist. Definitely, if you feel like you want to hack and slash your way through a good story at some point, go back to God of War because definitely one of my favorite stories in video games.
I'm about to get the platinum in Skyrim, so I need something new to play after.
Congratulations.
What I'll say, I mean, when it comes to games though that, you know, really feel, I don't know, current gen, feel like something that couldn't be played on a last gen system, the only one that I would say still would probably be Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart. God of War looks good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got a variable refresh rate TV, and the game runs at like 100 FPS and 4K and looks incredible. But at the end of the day, it's still gameplay wise. I mean, it's still basically 2018. I mean, not a whole lot's changed there. So the environments do look good, but to me, Rift Apart is the only game where I've been like totally wowed this generation. And frankly, I can't think of anything on Series X that's pushed me that way. Maybe Flight Simulator, but only because it's just possible on Series X. I mean, it looks pretty rough on that system overall. Like there are some weird graphical problems, and it only runs at like 30 frames because of how demanding it is. But I really haven't had like a current gen experience aside from Rift Apart personally. Certainly haven't had one this past year.
Well, I mean, like, there really isn't a current gen experience, right? For some reason, we're 2 years into these consoles' life cycles, and if you hadn't bought one until now, you wouldn't have really missed anything. That's like the big thing for me is it looks like into next year we're finally going to start turning over into like exclusives for the 5 and the Series X, and that's really exciting because I'm really excited to see how something like Hogwarts Legacy or Final Fantasy 16 looks when it's not held back. I mean, God of War Ragnarok will play on a base PS4 from 2013.
Digital Foundry has a great video. It still looks really good.
Yeah,
on
but
PS4.
You can't tell me that game wasn't held back in some way in order to get it to run on PlayStation 4. You know, that's what's frustrating about it is that like everyone knows that game was held back, and it would be a much better experience if that they had just focused on the PlayStation 5 and Series X. And there's 25 million units on PlayStation 5 sold. You have to imagine that a good chunk of them bought them to play God of War. So I feel like they could have actually gotten away with just making it a PlayStation 5 exclusive, but
it should have been.
I
think another good example for me is Gran Turismo 7, which normally racing games are gorgeous. They're an utter showcase of new hardware, and Gran Turismo 7 looks just like Gran Turismo Sport did because it's a PS4 game as well. It really is not like anything special visually, which is disappointing.
There's got to be like a breaking point though too, right? Like how lifelike, how much more lifelike can we possibly make things look visually when we look at it? I feel like we've almost reached the peak, especially when you look at like animation styles, like Ratchet and Clank. I don't really know how you could make Ratchet and Clank look any better than it already does. As far as like realism goes, we're getting there though, to the point where like our facial capture and stuff is getting to the point where it's getting hard to tell a difference at some point. And I think that's a conversation worth having, that eventually you might just not be able to tell a difference between generations at all. And I can see that happening in the next decade or so.
So I think for this generation is more going to be about the performance than the actual graphics upgrade than anything. Getting to 60 frames per second, 4K, ray tracing, which Gotham Knights, that was a big issue with that game. And out the gate, there was issues like this was supposed to be a PS5, PC, and Series X only game, right? Exclusive to that. So I think that for this generation, that's what we're going to be seeing more of than that jump. But the graphics for Rift Apart is just like, it's like people say, it's like watching a Pixar game, Pixar movie.
What was the Xbox 360 game? Was it Soul Calibur? Was that the one that had Vader and Yoda on it?
Yeah. Soul Calibur 4.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and like the smoke in Call of Duty 2 on Xbox 360 and being like, games are never going to look better than this. How could it possibly get any better? It's like, I feel like that's a discussion we always have, and like we forget that we always have it. I agree that I think we're going to reach a breaking point where like we've basically just recreated the real world in our video games, and it's just going to be kind of boring at that point. And I think Nintendo's got a leg up there because they have, compared to the competition, an underpowered system. But they've got some of the best art directors in the world. And when it comes to video games, right? Like, I didn't really care for Breath of the Wild, but that's a beautiful game that shouldn't work on the Switch, right? Like, there's no way that game should work. And like, you compare it to what is it called? Phoenix: Rise of Immortals or whatever on on PS5 and Xbox One, and like that game is really pretty, but it's kind of soulless compared to Breath of the Wild. And so like I think like we're gonna have to start getting smarter, and I say we, I mean like game developers, which is weird because I'm not one, but we're gonna have to start getting smarter about how we like make people feel when we play these games, because like we can't just show them what exists outside their world. I was playing Modern Warfare 2. I thought I like actually killed someone in Amsterdam. Like it was so uncomfortable. It was badass as hell, but like I felt bad after. I had to smoke a cigarette and like pour a little glass of wine and like think about my actions. And I'm never going to get that feeling on a Nintendo console. And that's great. I honestly think that might be why I'm so excited for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, just because like it looks like someone painted that world, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can see like actual craft in it, as opposed to just like capturing and repurposing everything you're already familiar with. And like that stuff is like technically impressive. Like I don't mean to dismiss the work that people do for it, but it's not doing anything for me. You know, like I need to see a more realistic car. Like I have one. Like I have a pretty real car.
Pretty real?
It's an old Jetta. I'm not going to pretend it's like the greatest car, but like it's pretty real. It's a real enough car.
By the way, just because you brought up the games will never look better than this topic earlier, MotorStorm was mine. When I saw MotorStorm, it was like, oh
my god,
this is the best a game can look.
Oh, the demo at Best Buy, the first one. I remember just like revving my engine up too much, and I had no idea, and then the car just like exploded. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
You know what I'm really disappointed in is the DualSense. Because
I disagree.
Well, hear me out.
No.
I think that the haptic feedback in it is so cool, but I can already see that developers aren't using it. There's none of that in God of War Ragnarok. And I'm like, oh God, if the first party's already letting go of it, then that means we're doomed. It's over. Because we see this every generation, right? Like there's these cool things that developers can do, and they're all like, yeah, but we're not really gonna do that. And that sucks because I think the DualSense is haptic feedback, especially when you play something like Astro's Playroom. Super cool. Super cool. But I can see that never being used again, which sucks.
I shouldn't have disagreed before you finished making your point. The one time it's like annoying, and like the one time they so consistently use it is like in shooter games where they just like make it harder to pull the trigger. I'm like, look, guy, you don't have to like actually make my PS5 controller into a Glock. Like it's fine that it's just like a game. I kind of like that like my reality is separated from my fiction a little bit. We don't have to recreate everything. But yeah, Astro's Playroom is honestly probably like top 3 game on PlayStation 5 2 years in.
For sure. Forbidden West does the same thing. Like when you're shoving a spear into the some of the doors, it makes it really hard to pull the trigger for no reason because that's not an action that would like be hard to like thrust the spear forward. But when you pull it, you're like, oh my god! Like, it feels like you're gonna break the controller when you do it. But yeah.
I think the best example of it so far, aside from Astro, is Gran Turismo 7. It actually does a really good job of when you're pulling the trigger, you can feel the car gripping the road. You can kind of feel like the vibrations on and off, and you can just kind of tell where your traction is based off of the haptics and the triggers. But for me, I think the thing I'm most disappointed with so far, at least when it comes to the PS5, the Series X has this feature, is the fact that we still don't have what is essentially the quick resume functionality on the PS5 2 years in. I didn't use it too much until recently, but I was playing on Series X, I was playing Cyberpunk, and basically it's like having rest mode but for multiple games. So you could stop Cyberpunk exactly where it's at and then open up, Call of Duty or Halo or whatever it is, go play that with your friends. Come back to exactly where you left off on Cyberpunk without booting the game up again. And the way the PS5 is built, it has that little switcher thing in the menu. There's literally a portion in the menu that is reserved for what this feature should be, and it just hasn't been implemented yet. It's very odd to me that they still haven't released that.
Yeah, because the PlayStation 5, it has sort of this feature, right? But it fully closes the game.
Right, exactly.
So like you can click on the game and it'll be like, pick up where you left off. But then it relies on the speed of the SSD to boot the game back up and actually load it and bring you back into the game. So
yeah. It is a cool feature. I didn't think I would use it, but then I got in the mix of playing Cyberpunk and another game at the same time on my Series X, and it was just the nicest thing to be able to not even close Cyberpunk, just leave it exactly where it was, go play the other game, open Cyberpunk, it is still exactly where it was. I don't have to sit through loading screens. I don't have to go through any menus. It's so nice. So
it was just the darndest thing.
I'm hoping that's probably my biggest disappointment so far. I'm hoping that is patched in on PS5 soon. That would be a very nice addition. But is there anything you guys?
Chance, fat chance that gets patched in. You're lucky you're able to change your name. All right.
That's true. I just changed my name 3 years ago, and PSN's been around for 10, 15 years at this point.
Just be thankful the network works and you don't have to do a network test in order to connect your PlayStation to the internet before you search the store.
Well, I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add. I think overall, for me, just overall comments, I've got mixed feelings so far on the PS5 and Series X. I think overall I'm very happy with them, but for the reason that George brought up about them being just stronger Xbox Ones and PS4s. I've got very large libraries for both of those systems, and so it's worked for me on that front. A lot of those games have gotten upgrades or faster loading times, and so I do appreciate that, but I'm still holding out for that true next-gen experience. And, God of War, I think, is aiding in that, and certainly Ratchet & Clank did, but hopefully we'll get some stuff next year. So, Coach.
I also think Spider-Man, that upgrade from the PS4 to 5 was like supreme. Like it would looked and played so amazing.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what they do with that series with 2, because I'm sure that'll only be on PS5. I think that'll be a true test of like, okay, what can the PS5 do? Because Miles Morales looks great, but it is also a PS4 game. So I really want to know what they can do with that engine only on PS5. And I guess they've already kind of done it with Rift Apart. But
And is
you know,
Wolverine supposed to come out next year also, or is that a 2024?
that's what they're saying, but I don't believe that. I think it's going
Yeah.
to be Spider-Man 2 next year and then Wolverine a year or two later.
Dude, I don't believe Wolverine's coming out. I don't. Like, that game, it just is floating around in the nebula, and people bring it up once in a while, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it canceled. I'm just saying.
No, that game's coming out. The game that's not coming out is Star Wars Old Republic remake. Like that one, that one's never coming out.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's unfortunate.
No, Wolverine is for sure coming out. Like that studio, Insomniac is huge.
I know they are.
What's Naughty Dog up to? Are they?
Oh, they're just making The Last of Us Part 2 remake.
Yeah, they're porting it to my Keurig. It's pretty exciting.
Wait,
I know
are
they're
you
making
serious?
Last of Us Factions or whatever that's going to be called, the multiplayer thing. I'm curious what that's going to turn out to be like. At this point, since it's a separate game, I hope it's somewhat more of like a Division, like single player co-op mix type game. I feel like if it's purely a PvP, that's not going to go over too well.
Austin, I love you so much. That sounds horrible. We don't need another one
Really?
of those. We don't need another one of those games, man. We got too many.
Yeah.
Well-
I just heard on Sacred Symbols this week that PlayStation hired the dude that designed Fortnite's battle passes at Naughty Dog to design something, and everyone's just assuming it's going to be for factions.
All right, so
Makes
it took
sense.
us like 15 years of online gaming to get to battle passes.
Yeah.
How do we kill battle passes? Like, how do we come up with a better solution? Because I'm getting sick of them, man. Like, there needs to be a way to reward people who can't treat this like it's a full-time job.
I don't know. I hate battle passes as well, and well, I don't hate them. My thing is that it's not fun when every game has a battle pass. I know we had a great conversation about this like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or whatever it was, and the situation has just gotten worse. But I think all these companies just use data constantly, right? So if they see that people aren't buying battle passes, they're more inclined to stop doing the battle pass. It's only going to take a few of them to start failing, and then the cascading effect happens. But I don't know. Speaking of Naughty Dog, I feel like I'm crazy sometimes because I have
You
just
might be.
come to the conclusion as an adult that I'm not a Naughty Dog guy. I just don't like Naughty Dog games. I don't think well, I mean, it's not that I don't like them. I find them very mild. I liked Uncharted 2, and
Even
that was
Spyro is
pretty
better
much
than
it.
Crash. Like, we need to have that conversation.
That's true, actually. Though Spyro's great.
I agree.
I don't know. I loved Uncharted 2, and then I found every Naughty Dog game that I played after that disappointing, including The Last of Us. I remember playing The Last of Us, and just everyone was talking about how great of an experience it was and how much it moved them. And I remember closing it and being like, okay, well, that was The Last of Us.
Well, I don't want to give Naughty Dog too much credit, right? But like, I don't think they obviously didn't create like the atmospheric third-person action adventure game, but they did a pretty good job of like bringing it to the next level, right? Like they really polished it up and
For sure.
presented it very well, and then everyone started doing it, and so like it's my favorite band's not the Beatles, but like a lot of my favorite bands will cite the Beatles as their favorite band. You know, it's like I feel like we just need more developers inspired by Naughty Dog so we can eventually kill Naughty Dog. That makes
Like
sense.
if you asked me my favorite PlayStation developers right now, I would put both Insomniac and Sucker Punch above Naughty Dog.
Yes, I agree with that.
And
I'm in the same boat.
I wouldn't even have to think about it. But most people, like, I feel like most people put Naughty Dog as the number one studio in the entire industry right now. And I'm like, their games they make are fantastic, right? But they don't hit me.
Yeah, it's really good. I just don't care about it whatsoever.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I don't smile when I'm playing a Naughty Dog game. I don't laugh. I don't even feel enjoyment. I'm just like, okay.
I didn't
Gotta
even
sink
enjoy
8
Uncharted
hours.
until 3, to be honest.
I didn't enjoy Uncharted 1, 3, 4, The Last of Us 1, The Last of Us. Well, I didn't play The Last of Us 2, but I played The Last of Us, the PlayStation 4 version, just to make sure I didn't like it. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm done.
Yeah. Now, I enjoyed the Last of Us, or the Uncharted games. Sorry, let me back that up. I enjoyed the Uncharted games, 1 through 4. I did like all of those, but the Last of Us has totally lost me. I have no interest in that franchise. I played through the first one and just it was not my thing. So I'm really hoping they don't milk that series moving forward, but it seems like that's exactly what they're going to do. So
That
It just
cow's
seemed like
getting
they had a
milked, buddy.
fire, right? They had a fire. Like any rock band or any band that, when they're early on, they're putting out hits. And then as they get older, it changes a little bit, right? So I remember reading this piece where they came out with Uncharted 1 and it got nominated for Game of the Year. And then they went back and that's all they wanted to do is create the best third-person adventure game, right? And did Uncharted 2 get Game of the Year?
yeah,
I would imagine, yeah.
yeah, it was a huge game.
So is that fire there anymore for them? Do they care? Or are they more about I mean, I don't know. It's developers, just like any type of entertainers, they change after time.
You've changed, man.
Maybe it's your fault.
Maybe.
So, all right, guys. Well, let's wrap up the show with what we've been playing. I know we've got a few big games that have released over the past couple of weeks. And so, Coach, I want to start with you because usually you don't have a whole lot that you're playing, but I know you've actually been playing some stuff this time around. So what have you got for us?
We had a 3-day weekend. So I didn't really do too much. So I did purchase the new Tactics Ogre game.
Ooh.
But here's the thing, man. So like when I got into it, I'm like, oh my God, this is way over my head. I'm not ready for this. Is like sending one of my freshmen to take Calculus 2 or something like that, right? It's just,
dude, it's so funny because you just asked us like a year or two ago how to get into RPGs.
Well, no, I asked you about not into RPGs. I asked you about Xenoblade because I saw that and there's just so much stuff going on the overlay or whatever, right? So then I was doing some research and they're like, and on GameFAQs and some of the people or Reddit, they said Final Fantasy V is a perfect game to play because something about the job system or the skills or something like that. Like if you learn about that, then you'll have a more enjoyable time with that. So, then I got Triangle Strategy, and there's not a lot going on with that RPG, right? So I played almost about 6 hours of that on between Friday and Saturday. So, and the story has got me. Like it's got me. It's good. Good story.
So do you not like Fire Emblem, or how come you never moved into Fire Emblem?
I played the first 2 on the Game Boy Advance.
Because Fire Emblem is widely regarded as like the best strategy RPG out right now, and that's on. I know you love your Switch, so
well, I love
check out Fire Emblem.
I love my Breath of the Wild on the Switch. That's what I love.
That's true. Yeah, I would check out Fire Emblem, man. I think people love Three Houses. I haven't personally played it, but
I'm excited for the new one. Three Houses. I enjoyed what I played, but it was so dialogue heavy. It was trying to be like Persona, but times 20.
It felt like an anime. And
I'm hoping the new one's a little less of that. Yeah.
I hate the character designs of the new
one. I do agree with that. I do agree.
People were making fun of the main character because they say it looks like Coolgate.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that. I just hope the game itself is good, but we'll see.
And then, of course,
George?
Pokemon comes out this
Oh.
week. So I
That's true.
pre-ordered and paid for. I got Scarlet.
Ooh,
Nice.
nice.
No,
Ooh,
sorry,
okay.
Violet. I got Violet.
Not
Good.
nice.
I got Scarlet,
Wow.
so that means we're going to be trading buddies. Look at us, Coach.
Yes. Yeah. And we could still do raids together too, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know
Drew.
how all the multiplayer stuff in that works. I'm curious how like integrated it is.
And
Completely forgot
it's
about that.
so funny because I was doing a little bit of research because I knew that there was some performance issues, and so many people that had early access to the game, nobody talked about it because they were afraid that they would never get their little precious copy of the game again, right? But there were a couple that actually came out and described in detail the performance issues. And so today I saw that you sent a tweet or something by Austin John that says the newest update does fix the performance issues, which that makes me happy.
They've got to do something at some point, though, man. I mean, I'm glad that the patch kind of helps, but there's got to be a Switch Pro or something soon. I mean, some of these developers are trying to push the Switch a little too hard, and it's not working out for them.
But remember, this is Nintendo you're talking about.
That's true.
They'll
They'll release a Switch Pro, and all it'll have extra on it will be a camera.
It's about time,
Like
though.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
the Switch came out in 2017, right?
Yep. It's been 5 years. It'll be
Yeah.
6 years next year.
It's getting there. It's about time.
Yep. George, what about you, man? What have you been up to this past couple weeks?
Oh man, I am falling back in love with Skyrim. The anniversary edition is awesome because they included all this new content. Like they added a whole bunch of new items, a whole bunch of new quests, a whole bunch of new locations that are kind of just like quality of life changes. They added this one location, I think it's called Mirror Watch, and it's literally just a tower you find, and like there's a dead body in front of it with a key, and then it just becomes yours because you find the key. And it's nothing special, but it's got like all these weapon plaques for very specific weapons. And it's got all these mannequins for very specific armor sets. And it's got different areas for you to place all like the dragon priest mask. And so this isn't like a big thing, but it's a really cool way of just like celebrating Skyrim, if that makes sense, where it just like it lets you sort of like brag about everything you have accomplished. And so like right now I'm pissed because I've only got like 8 of the Dragon Priest masks, and it's making me like want to go collect the rest of them so I can just put them up in my collection. Like they basically just figured out a way to make stamps cool in 2022, which is really all I was looking for. Besides that, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, like I talked about earlier, that game is bordering on uncomfortable in how pretty it is. And the multiplayer I haven't touched too much because hardcore mode doesn't come out until Wednesday, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah, I want to try that game at some point. I was playing a little bit of Modern Warfare. Was it 2019?
Yeah,
2018, 2019. I was playing a little bit of that one maybe about a month ago, and because I never beat the campaign on it, and even that game still looks really good and plays really well. So I do want to get to at some point, especially with Warzone 2 coming out. I never really got super into the first one, but you know, if I could have the campaign and multiplayer and Warzone all on that single install, might be worth my time. All on that 250 gigabyte install.
Right. I will say, Activision needs to pull its head out of its ass when it comes to like actually designing how these games go on your console. Like, there's no single campaign download. So like I was like, I just want to play the campaign, and it's just like, oh, you need to download the campaign. I'm like, well, that's freaking annoying. You told me I was downloading the entire game, but whatever. And then I started the campaign, and they're like, well, you actually need to download part 2 of the campaign down. I'm like, okay, why didn't you just do that? But whatever. So I started downloading part 2, and I was like, okay, finally, now 2 hours later, I can finally play the campaign. And they're like, actually, you need to download part 3, dumbass. Like, why'd you think you could just play the game? And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll play this game tomorrow. This sucks. This sucks so much butts. I hate it. So I'm going to let this suck butt, and I'm just going to go watch Seinfeld and have a little wine because I hate everything about Activision. They just got to make it smoother. And like this happened when the console launched, I grabbed Black Ops Cold War. And same thing where like it was just like the UI and the game didn't really make the most sense. So it turns out I was like playing the PlayStation 4 version for like the first like week, and I was just like, this looks good, but it doesn't look that different. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because it's not different at all, you moron. And it like, I don't think I'm a stupid person. I think people make things more complicated than they need to be. And so Activision, I think, is honestly the worst perpetrator in that regard. And they got to clean it up, man.
Well, when you have to go to message boards to find out where exactly you have to go, because it's nestled underneath their hub. It doesn't. It's just crazy, because I had that same issue with the reboot of Modern Warfare a couple years ago. And you have to click all of there's like 10 different packs that you have to download, and there was like 3 campaign packs and 4 HD packs, and it was just like, what the hell is going on?
Dude, installs and downloads in general, though, I mean, I do agree that Activision, especially with Call of Duty, they're the worst. But just in general, they've gotten out of control. And I know it's just a matter of, the fidelity of games and how good they look and how much content they're putting into these games. But, as we'll talk about here in a second, of course, we talked about it a little earlier, but God of War Ragnarok released, and that game, even the physical copy, has a 90 gigabyte install. And even when you put in the disc, for me, it took an hour to install the game from a disc, which is insane. Like that, why? I don't know. So something's got to be done at some point. I mean, I thought the whole point of the SSDs was to kind of shrink some of these install sizes, and that clearly has not happened.
You remember that damn conference they had, where all they talked about for like 2.5 hours was the SSD,
yes,
and how it was going to work.
It was Mark Cerny, and he was just talking about how fast the PS5 was.
And it turns out he was just telling us all to S his SD. Made that joke. I will say really quickly, with Anniversary Edition Skyrim, the load times are beautiful. It takes 2 seconds to go from one area into another. It's I don't know if it's like impressive because this is a 10-year-old game, but man, what if we just made really pretty PlayStation 3 and 360 games that just loaded really fast and had like a 15 gigabyte footprint on your hard drive? Like, what if we actually just did that this generation? That would be kind of revolutionary.
You're not wrong. Just make sure when you're playing through that Skyrim, you don't leave too many doors open. All right.
Dude, I started getting a glitch where like a character was following me, and I had flashbacks to when that jackass from the Companions was following me in my PlayStation 3 version. I was like, oh no, it happened again. No, not when I'm so close. I'm at 68% of the trophies. Just let me be. But it fixed itself.
What were some of the other things they said caused the PS3 slowdown? You left too many doors open. If you like put too many things inside your house, I think was one of them.
Yeah, if you like dropped or moved items from like where they were originally placed.
Yeah. Like half the point of the game.
Yeah, if you just did everything you instinctually want to do during that game, you're gonna have the worst time. Don't do it.
So what was the issue even with that game? Was it just the RAM?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the game remembers everything that you touch, essentially, right? And like where you put it. And it runs all that constantly. So if you were to like leave too many doors open in Skyrim, and closed is their default position, but if you leave them open, it has to remember it. So
it's so stupid. Oh my god.
Yeah. So like, because the PS3 had split its RAM to like half of it went to the user interface and half of it went to games, Skyrim really struggled. And I think eventually they released like some patches.
It didn't work. It
didn't.
I tried. It didn't work. Like they were like, it honestly depends on the disc copy you have. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like that's a stupid thing to leave up to chance. And like 2 years after too, or like a year after, like one of the devs from Oblivion Studios, what the dudes who did Fallout New Vegas? Obsidian Studios.
Yeah.
He was just like, yeah, well, when we were doing Fallout New Vegas and we were working on this, like, this is the problem. This is how we corrected it. Like, we think it might be this issue. And then Todd Howard or like someone from Bethesda was like, no, the shit, it's not that problem. Thank you very much for offering your advice, though. And they just like shut him down. And it was like, this is a really antagonistic relationship. I really hope one day Microsoft buys Obsidian Studios and they become like the darling RPG maker. And then a year later, they buy Bethesda and it's awkward as hell at Thanksgiving. That'd be so cool. That'd be awesome. Here we are.
Here we are. And the guys at Obsidian are still cool. They're like, yeah, we'd love to make Fallout.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just said that recently. They were like,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'd love to
return
make
to
a good one of those games again because Bethesda doesn't. So
We'd
someone
love
should.
to make Todd Howard look like an idiot.
Dude, all I want is Avowed.
I know.
I just want Avowed.
I know.
Outer Worlds was better than Fallout 4.
It really was. Yeah.
Drastically better. So
Yeah.
our last couple games here, Seth, you've got an interesting opinion on this, so I want to start with you. God of War Ragnarok.
Well, hold on, because
Lay it out. Unless you got more.
I do got more. I went and bought my 4th Switch last week.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
So as you guys may know, I have a natural repulsion to the Nintendo Switch, where every cell in my body rejects it for some reason.
Like
And-
meth.
Yes. And well, I'm not sure that's how math works, but generally you get addicted to meth. I think. I've never taken meth.
Okay, let's say poison. Let's just say poison instead, like a generic poison, right? Like your body would
Yeah.
just reject generic poison. Okay.
So usually I get a Switch and I'll play it for like a little bit, and I would end up just selling them, right? But Pokemon comes out this weekend, and I've been wanting to play Xenoblade and Bayonetta 3, so I was like, all right, whatever. So I just went and bought a Switch OLED, and I've been playing Xenoblade 3, and I really like it. I think it's really, really good. It has a lot of the spirit of the original 2 games. I'm really interested in where the story's going, but the one thing I can't get over in Xenoblade 3 is the character designs. They drive me absolutely crazy, dude. I can't get into a sci-fi game where my characters are rolling around in Converse and bomber jackets. Like, I hate it so
They're all from San Francisco,
much. I hate it, dude.
Sound pretty cool to me. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Converse and bomber jackets are cool here, but they're not that cool on a giant island that's built on top of a robot skeleton. You know, I can't do it. And like the one tank girl, she's wearing like tights and like high top Jordans. And I'm like, oh,
Sounds hot.
I can't do it. It drives me crazy, man. I don't know why. Because Xenoblade 2, I loved, they had a whole theme with the character designs. And they all fit together. You can look at these characters and be like, oh yeah, they fit in this world together. But the characters, for some reason, in 3, just all stand out like a sore thumb. And I hate them. I hate them. So that's my current trauma that I'm dealing with right now.
That's nice.
Are you getting Pokemon on Thursday?
I
night
am.
is-
Me and Caitlin are both getting Pokemon.
Oh, yes.
Dang it.
Austin, you got to.
Guess I need to get it. Jesus.
Then we could start doing raids.
Yeah. Do some raids.
I got Scarlet and she got Violet, is what I was trying to say. So that's pretty cool. But what was I say? Oh, God of War. Yeah, so I started playing God of War. It's pretty much all I've been playing since, whenever I had a second in downtime. And I told you guys in the group chat that I was pretty cold on the opening of God of War. I didn't think that it was that it didn't grab me like I thought it was going to. And like I said before, I love the 2018 God of War. But the 2018 God of War, when it starts out, it's a very dark game. Well, I mean, the entire game is dark. Like it's about taking Kratos' wife's ashes to her, the highest mountain in her homeland and spreading them. That's essentially like the entire goal of the game. So, you're now Kratos with this kid, and that have to grow their relationship and figure out why these gods are hunting them. It's a very dark story. It's a very mature story, and I don't feel the stakes in God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok is essentially like in my opinion, it's not even really a sequel. It doesn't feel like God of War 2. It feels like just the second. I don't know, it feels like another episode of like a TV show is what it feels like, right? Because like I feel like that God of War 2018, it was resolved, and they gave you some cliffhangers that would lead into the next game, but they don't play off of those specific cliffhangers. They go in a different direction with it. And I'm trying really hard not to give details and spoil it, right? Because like there's the whole thing with Freya in God of War 2018. But as far as I am in the game, I'm a decent chunk of the way into the game. She's barely made an appearance. So it's like, what are the stakes? Why do we care so much? And also, I don't know if you realize this game takes place 2 years after the first one. So there's a 2-year gap in between these two games. And yet, at the end of the first game, something happens that happens in the beginning of this game. So the timeline doesn't add up at all. It doesn't really line up. Which is confusing to me. But yeah, well, I don't feel the stakes. And also, I'm struggling with it, man. Like I don't remember like struggling with the 2018 version. I feel like this game's a lot harder.
Yeah. I will tell you this. They do explain the time difference. There is a moment where they explain why that scene happened in 2018.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. I don't know if you're there yet, but I decided to kick it down to easy because I was struggling too much on normal, and I wanted to get through the game for the story, to be honest with you. I mean, I enjoyed the combat. I think the combat's fantastic, but I'm not a big like Dark Souls person. Like I didn't want to just sit there dying, struggling nonstop. I wanted to just enjoy the game, and so I kicked it down to easy, and that's how I've been playing. But
yeah, because I was getting killed on normal, and I'm like,
but even on easy though, Seth. Like I still like there have been a few times where I've almost died, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know because I don't remember struggling with the 2018 one, no. And then all of a sudden we get this, and it's like we're going to kill myself. I don't know.
Yeah. I do get where you're coming from with the stakes of the story, because I do kind of agree with you so far. I'm about 9 hours in. I know it's like a 20-hour long game for the story if you're just mainlining. So I've been doing a lot of the side quests, so it'll probably take me a bit longer than that. But I do agree that the stakes are kind of odd compared to the first game. Like it doesn't feel quite as urgent. It's just kind of like you're stumbling through learning more, I guess is the way I can put it without spoiling the plot of the game. But I don't know. I feel like I'm getting to a point where the stakes are really picking up. It is starting to feel like, oh, this is actually like a big deal. But the first like 7-8 hours, it kind of just feels like you're stumbling through things by chance. And I've still loved it. I mean, I've loved every second. But I do get where you're coming from, is my point. What I will tell you, though, is the side quests have some extraordinarily well-written moments. I was very shocked by that. I can't recall a single side quest from the first game. And this game has so many good ones that I've already encountered.
So just right before we did the podcast, I did the side quest where I released the jellyfish. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That was pretty cool.
That one.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I love that one. There's one where you release another creature that's a little earlier on, maybe the world prior, and I really love that side quest as well. But overall, I'm totally in love with the game, even with some of the complaints Seth said. I do agree with him there. I don't necessarily know that it's better than the first game per se. I will say I agree with you, Seth, too, that it does feel like a part 2 Like it doesn't necessarily feel
Yeah.
like the sequel. It feels more like these are two games that were the additional episode is the best way to put it. I
Yeah.
think that's a great description.
And I can't explain it, right? Because
Yeah, I know.
I thought this was a stupid complaint when I first heard it. Where people are like, yo, it feels like DLC to the first game. I'm like, okay, but it's a sequel. Like, what do you expect? And in my head, I was like, okay, well, what was the difference between like God of War 1 and 2 on PS2, right? Like, you weren't getting a giant graphical upgrade. There wasn't a giant gameplay upgrade. You got some different weapons, but that was pretty much it. But for some reason, as I'm playing it, or as I started playing it, I was like, this really does feel like it could have just been the second half of the first game. Like I don't know how to explain that feeling any differently, but I don't really know. I don't know, but that's kind of how I'm feeling with it. Where I'm like, yeah, this feels like it could have just been in 2018. But I'm not disliking the game, and the more I'm getting into it, the less of that feeling of disappointment is there. I'm hoping that we get a different weapon at some point, because that was one of my favorite parts of the first three games was seeing the different types of weapons Kratos would get in every game.
Yeah, because you could get like the spear and
there was a spear, there was the sword, there was like the Hades hooks in God of War 3. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this ends up. It's really funny to me to see Kratos in these situations and then think back to like all the things he did in God of War 1, 2, and 3. Where he's like yelling at his son to be like careful and whatnot, and I'm like, I definitely saw you dive head first into hell. Yeah.
I will say this: it's making me want to replay the first three. Like in hindsight, I always tell myself that I didn't love those games, but the more I think about them, I think I actually did really enjoy them, and I want to revisit them at some point.
God of War 3 is one of my favorite games on PS3, and it holds up extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
And it makes me really sad because this is just a side note. My dad got it for me for Easter one year, right?
It's a great Easter gift.
Right, but because like my mom was like she would get me like the Easter baskets, like all the carefully placed candy in them, and like my dad's like, "What do you want for Easter?" Anyway, I rented the game from Blockbuster like a week before Easter, and I was playing it at his house, and he's like, "Is this the new God of War game?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, I was like, "Yeah, I rented it from Blockbuster." He goes, "Well, why did I buy it for you then?" And he went out to his truck and gave it to me. He's like, "Happy Easter," and then like threw it on my bed, and I'm like, "Oh
my god,
this is sad." I felt really bad. I still feel bad about it. I'm weird like that, but yeah. I mean, I guess by the time the next episode rolls around, we'll probably both have beaten it, and we can give our final thoughts on it. But that's pretty much all I've been playing.
No, that's the same for me. That's all I've been playing. The one thing I will say, my final note here is my favorite new thing that they added to this game mechanically is for both the axe and the blades. If you hold triangle or like hit triangle, they'll do certain like power ups, and the blades like winding, spinning up the blades and lighting them on fire to then.
Was that not in the first one?
That is the coolest thing. I don't think so.
I don't remember. I thought in my head that was in the first one, but I might be mistaken on that.
You're just sitting there tapping triangle, and like Kratos is like spinning the blade. It's
faster,
the coolest mechanic.
Yeah, it is cool.
So good. So yeah, that's our thoughts on God of War Ragnarok so far. And like you said, Seth, we'll probably have beaten it by next episode.
Real quick, one thing I want to say is the dialogue in this game is really good. It's really funny too.
It is.
One of the things
Sindri is one of the most underrated characters so far for me. I love him.
One of the things I really love is they really make sure, like, they make sure you know it's a sequel, right? Like, you go to the dwarves' shop to get armor, and the dwarves go, "What happened to all the equipment we we already built for you. And Kratos is just like, I broke it. Right? And then like when you're walking around in the one dungeon, like they recorded so many strangely specific lines of dialogue for this game to where like you'll backtrack and the like Atreus will be like, oh, so we're going back here again? And like when you're rolling around with a third character and you go explore, he'll be like, oh, don't worry about him. He's just really thorough. And like they keep referencing
Oh yes,
these
I
things.
love that. I love that. Yeah.
And Atreus is like, Dad just likes to explore or whatever. And I'm like, how do they?
So yes, I'm smashing every chest in the area.
Yeah, no.
Yes, he likes to explore.
The
So good.
dialogue is really fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Yes.
So,
I agree.
after I got through that beginning portion, my enjoyment of the game has been going up quite a bit.
Yeah, for me, it's gotten better and better with each play session. I mean, the story gets more and more interesting for me. So, looking forward to see where it goes.
God, there is one thing one specific portion of the game that I'm not crazy about, right? And I wish I could talk to you about it, but you can
Save it
probably
for another
imagine.
day.
You can probably imagine what I'm talking about.
No, I know what you're talking about. So, all right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Anybody else have anything you'd like to add? Nothing for Coach?
I missed Coach. That's the one thing I want to add.
Okay. I miss Coach
He's right
too.
there. Like, how could you miss him?
Well, I haven't
missed
seen
you
him in
all
like
too.
8 years.
He's not wearing camouflage.
My drawstrings are.
Yeah, his drawstrings on his hoodie are
Oh,
camouflage.
that's why-
So
that's why
unfortunately,
George
we
missed
can't
you.
see those 2 like 4-inch long strips on his chest.
That's right.
So
That's why George missed you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening. Of course, if you are listening this far, you know where to find us. But please share the show with your friends. Let them know where to find us if they're into games, nerd culture, all that good stuff. Please follow us on social media. Frameskip itself is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at frameskippod. Coach is not on Twitter. Seth is. Seth, the 90s kid.
Don't follow me.
George is on Twitter at purplebird616.
Woo.
And I'm on Twitter at Austin J. Eller. So find us all there. And we will return soon enough with more gaming goodness. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Goodbye.
Amigos.